Okay, lad, for today I'll be reading ye the Five Nights at Freddy's, the Silver Eyes book. So, let me start. He sees me. Charlie dropped to her hands and knees. She was wedged behind a row of arcade games, cramped in a crawl space between the consoles and the wall. Tangled electrical cord and useless plugs strewn beneath her. She was cornered. The only way out was to put herself past that thing. And she wasn't fast enough to make it. She could see him stalking back and forth, catching flickers of movement through the gaps between the games. There was scarcely enough room to move, but she tried to crawl backward. Her foot caught in the cord. She stopped controlling herself and carefully dislodged it. She heard a clash of metal and metal. The farthest console rocked back against the wall. He hit it again, shattered the display, then attacked the next, chasing against them, crashing against them almost rhythmically, tearing through the machinery. Coming close. I have to get out. I have to. The panicked thought was of no help. There was a way to find out. Her arm ached, but she wanted to sob out loud. Blood soaked through the tattered bandage, and it seemed as though she could feel it draining out of her. The console, a few feet away, crashed against the wall, and Charlie flinched. He was getting closer. She could hear the grinding of the gears and the clicking of servos ever louder. Eyes closed. She could still see the way he looked at her. See the matted fur and the exposed metal beneath the synthetic flesh. Suddenly, the console in front of her was wrenched away. It toppled over, thrown down like a toy. The power cords beneath her hands and knees were yanked away, and Charlie slipped, almost falling. She caught herself and looked up just in time to see in the downward swing of the hook. Welcome to Hurricane, Utah. Charlie smiled really, I don't know how to say the word, so at the sign and kept driving. The world didn't look any different from one side to another, but she felt nervous anticipation as she passed. She didn't recognize anything. So, I don't know why I'm taking a break. I just went to be I'm just kidding. So, you get to see something so far. Just checking how long this thing is. Okay, so chapter 1 is extremely long. Chapter 1 is extremely long. It's like, let me see, lads. Chapter 1 is 38 pages long. I'll read first. Then again, she hadn't really expected to. Not this far, at the edge of town where it was a highway of empty space. She wondered what the others would look like. Who are they now? 10 years they'd been best friends. And it happened. Everything ended. At least for Charlie. She hadn't seen any of them since they were 7 years old. They had written all the time as kids, especially Marla, who wrote like she talked, fast and inconsiderate. But they got older, they had grown up. The letters had gotten fewer and further between. The conversations leading up to this trip had been perfunctory, all full of awkward apologies. Charlie repeated the names of the minors to reassure herself that she still remembered them. Marla, Jessica, Lamar, Carlton, and Michael. Michael was the reason for this trip. After all, it was 10 years since he died. 10 years since it happened. Now his parents wanted them all together for the dedication of his ceremony. They wanted all of his old friends there when they announced it. The scholarship they were creating in his name. Charlie knew it was a good thing to do, but the gathering still felt slightly macabre. They shivered and turned down the air conditioning. Even though she knew it was not the cold. As she drove to the town center, Charlie began to recognize few things. A stores and a movie theater, which are now advertisements. Summer blockbuster hit. She felt a brief moment of surprise. then smiled at herself. What did you expect? The whole place would be unchanged? The monument of your departure, frozen forever in July 1985. But that's exactly what she expected. She looked at her watch. Still a few hours to kill before they all met up. She thought about going to see the movie, but she knew what she really wanted to do. Charlie made a left turn and headed out of town. 10 minutes later, she pulled to a stop and got out. The house loomed up before her, its dark outline in the bright blue sky. Charlie leaned back the car, slightly dizzy. She took a moment to steady herself with deep breaths. She had known it would be there. The illicit look through Aunt's bank books a few years before I got in the mortgage was paid off. And that Aunt Jen was still paying property taxes. It had only been 10 years. There was no reason it should have changed. Charlie climbed the steps slowly, taking in the peeling paint. The third stair had a loose board, and rose bushes had taken over one side of the porch, their thorns biting hungrily into the wood. The door was locked, but Charlie still had a key. She had never actually used it. As she took it around from her neck and slid it into the lock, remembered her father putting his chain around his neck in case he ever needed it. Well, she needed it now. The door opened easily, and Charlie looked around. She didn't remember much about the first couple of years here. She had only been 3 years old. All of her memories had faded together in a blur of child's grief and loss, of not understanding why her mother had to go away, clinging to her father every moment, not trusting the world around her unless he was there, unless she was holding him tight, burying herself in flannel shirts and smell of grease and hot metal him. The stairs stretched straight up in front of her, but she did not move directly to them. Instead, she went into the living room, where the footing was still in place. She had not really noticed it as a child, but the house was a little too large for the furniture they had. Things were out too widely in order to fill the space. The coffee table too far from the couch to reach. The easy chair too far across from the room to carry conversation. There was a dark, stained wooden floorboards near the center of the room. Charlie stepped around it and quickly went to the kitchen, where the cupboards held only a few pots and pans and dishes. Charlie had never felt the lack of anything as a child, but seeing now that it was unnecessary enormity of the house was sort of an apology. The attempt of a man who had lost so much to give to his daughter what he could. He always had an overdoing whatever he did. The last time in that the house had been dark and everything felt wrong. She carried up the stairs to her bedroom. Although she was 7 years old and could have gone quicker on her own 2 feet, but Aunt Jen stopped on the front porch, picked her up, and carried her. She held her face as though she was a baby glaring in the sun. In her room, Aunt Jen set Charlie down in the closet, the bedroom door behind him. She told her to pack a suitcase, and Charlie had cried because all her things could never fit in that small case. You can come for it back for the rest later, Aunt Jen said, her impatience leaking through Charlie, hovered intensely at her dresser, trying to decide which t-shirts to bring along. They'd never come back for the rest. Well, okay, so, lads, I know this is long-ish, but just as long as this is what I'm using to it, will hold. So, check out on page 8. So, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time for the next video. So goodbye, you scallywags.